Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart of Scrolls podcast. This is going to be a little bit of a special episode, and I don't mean special in the nice way, but special in the, that slow kid way. Our plans fell a bit through here, so we're going to do the best with the situation. But enough of the excuses now. Let's introduce the cast instead. Today, you see that I'm hosting. I'm gonna do a nice job as usual, and we have brought one of our mainstays on, the Overlord. Say hi.
Hello!
And also joining us is another badger, Greenie Fubini.
Hello.
And our lovely multitasking friend Ice Cream is gonna do Tech and Beyond podcast and hear himself at the same time. So give a warm round of applause to Ice Cream. Say hi, Ice Cream.
Thank you. I can hear you, everybody, applauding at home. It's real sweet. Thank you.
So since it's a bit of an improv episode, we are a bit in luck that we actually have something to talk about. If you didn't notice, about 5 hours ago, the Scrolls Dev Tumblr blog got updated with another status update from Henrik and Måns, and where they are talking a bit about the changes that are going to come in the close future and maybe the long future. So we're going to go through that post and discuss it a bit. And if you have questions, please post them in the chat and we'll deal with them accordingly. I think that we might have a lot of time for questions this episode, so don't be shy. But let's start then. As you know, we are just into a pretty big patch, the 0.1.1.2.4, right?
Yep.
Which released, and that made a lot of changes to underplayed scrolls. And we thought that one was pretty massive, but it turns out now that the Mojang development team have plans now to go back and revisit almost all scrolls in Scrolls, getting it ready for release, I would assume. In the sense that they're going to try to make it more accessible to beginners and experienced players alike. So, and they also posted some examples there. So let's try to look at the examples first and see what you think about those, and then maybe also talk a little bit about if we have any particular scrolls that we think are in extra need of some special attention there. So first off is the new Unbind. As you know, Unbind is almost unplayable at the moment. The current one is reading, it costs 1 decay, you sacrifice target non-decay structure you control, and you increase decay by 1. And one of the problems we have with this one is, of course, that there are very few targets that actually want to use this on. The new one, on the other hand, is a completely different scroll. Major revamp. So instead it costs 2 decay, and it removes all enchantments from target unit. Its countdown is increased by 1. So what do you think about this scroll then? Should we start maybe with Ludwig? You might have an opinion on this one.
I am Ludwig, the Overlord, in case anyone wants to know. I just have to ask a bit short first that even in decks like rat decks, like decks that are not competitive, did anyone ever actually use Unbind? I don't remember anyone actually used it in a deck ever. Maybe in a memorial deck, question mark. Anyway, this is probably the first time I've seen a deck, no, not a deck, a card on a, what will be your word that get total revamp. Has sort of happened in the test server, but never mind. So, I'm quite surprised.
We lost our host. Go on.
Well, I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be a really good card. That's no doubt. It's a purification that also increases countdown, and it costs 2, but still. So, yes, it's gonna be. Not to go. To let others speak. I will just say it's gonna be probably a pretty good card, although sometimes situational, but overall a really good one.
I'll take the word if I can. I think they were thinking a lot about answers to negative enchantments on your own field, because when I read the comment under this change, it was about having a what's the word, like negative thing to a positive thing, and the countdown is supposed to be affecting your own creatures, and I thought it was designed in a bit of this sense, but I think it's going to be unbelievably strong on opponent units, unless you can cast it on your own, in which case I would be yeah. Anyone care to take the word while I check up if I'm stupid?
I just also I am a bit talking a bit all over the place because I haven't totally processed this. I read it quite just some time ago. What I will say is that keep in mind, for those who might react like, well, this is gonna be totally overpowered. It might be a bit too strong, but it's just that because it's a bit flexible. You have to keep in mind how strong is purification at the moment. Purification is useful, but it's not actually that strong. It's just that this also has increased countdown by 1, and it's on units and not just your own. So it's a bit more flexible. You can use it on a eager scryer on your own if you actually want it, but most part this is probably going to be used on the opponent when you want to use that increased countdown for whatever reason. So it's a little bit more flexible, and that is what kind of makes it better than purification, in my opinion. But I don't have too much to say about it. It's a purification. They are making purification that also increase countdown by 1.
I think it's definitely depending on its uses depending on how the meta is right now. If you have a lot of good targets for it, it's really not a standalone scroll in any way. Like if cards like Oak Blood and other good enchantments are very popular, you might want to try it. But on its own, I don't think decay decks have room for random cards that are flexible. I don't know.
Yeah, I can agree to that. It's also quite interesting that they've been pushing enchantments like hell, and when enchantments sort of now they become really popular. Let's give a lot of counter to it.
But I mean, that's a nice dynamic. Like you make something stronger, and then you can put in scrolls that counteract the strong enchantments. That's I think a good thing. You can, you have interesting dynamics in deck building.
I guess it's gonna be a counter to both negative enchantments like languid and the poison and so on, and also a counter to the positive ones. What's a bit interesting, as you say, is that it seems like they are pushing they were trying to push the defensive enchantments in the last patch now. The offensive ones, as we have alluded to before, has always been fairly strong, machinated, and I mean even champion ring and some of the others are. I mean, at least you're getting the power out of it, so it's almost like a sort of pseudo removal spell in a lot of times. But the defensive ones they've struggled with a little bit more. It's a little bit weird that they think that they need more enchantment removal, because in general, I mean, enchantments are vulnerable to the creature itself being removed, and they kind of nerfed a lot of those ways.
So yeah, sorry for interrupting.
No, but go ahead.
Okay, because I think, although I can see some enchantment being a bit of a problem, I think they don't state here that they are doing this to combat these enchantments. But it's like, why would they make this if it's not a combat enchantment? It's the sole purpose of it. And I feel like some of the enchantments that may need to be combated, I think they themselves need to be tweaked a bit. I think that they themselves are a bit too strong, perhaps. I don't think we needed this to negate all kinds of enchantments in the game.
Here
No,
is-
no, but
Go on.
sorry.
No, go, Dave.
I was just saying, I think it is a good point that you made, Sysp, that they nerfed straight up removal because it's kind of boring to have one way to deal with enchantments and creatures at the same time. So I think they're trying to bring more angles into the game. Like you have to combat creatures and now you have to combat enchantments as well. Like you can't do both at the same time anymore, except with Damning Curse. But yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. But I have another one to raise, and that's actually legit, and I'm not talking with my ass. Because it's in Decay, right? And Decay already had the best responses to enchantments. They have Damning Curse, which is absolutely counter to every enchanted creature ever. And now they'll have this.
Except for Ward, yeah.
And enchantment growth, when it meets decay, if something else isn't added, of course, for growth, then it can just GG out if somebody is running Unbind, because it's just yet another counter to this. And I think this scroll could have been in some other color, like energy or order. Not really in decay. Or growth.
Yeah, that's
sorry.
what I thought too.
Not really on decay.
Yeah, I kind of agree to that. I can see it also be a bit controversial when it comes to theme-wise. Like the countdown definitely fits that. It's a kind of Decay thing. Decay like to have stuff that has drawbacks to them, but the whole purification thing, not sure. I don't see a parchment that says this only belongs to order, but it has kind of been pseudo.
Yeah. They tend to do that. I don't know if you noticed, but I've seen a pattern of them doing when they do a theme, for instance. What theme should we take? Ranged, exactly. They usually put it heavily into one faction, and then sort of like have a splash of it in another faction, and then the other two factions almost receive none of it. I mean, for ranged, for instance, energy obviously has it in spades, and then you have some of it on order creatures. I think you have a lobber there, and you have
Crossbowman.
yeah, actually, you have a lot of it. Maybe the second one is actually Decay there, which has more than that. But the growth has none of it. So maybe it's not even that they put it in two. Maybe they have it in a sort of a descending order, where the last one is not receiving any of it. It feels like it's a little bit like that, for instance, with structure removal, also, where Decay is the worst one of it, and energy is probably the best one at it. So because this has direct damage and tick bombs and incendiaries and whatnot. Wonder if it's the same thing here with enchantment removal, that they're planning on putting it into. I mean, Order already have it. They're putting some of it maybe into Decay, just so they can. So Decay is more about enchantments, both on both sides. I mean, Decay is usually very interested in both sides when it comes to enchantments. And then maybe one of the other factions won't receive any. For instance, energy might not receive any direct.
I would like to see such an effect in growth, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's
It's possible that growth might get one then by that logic. That they will get some kind of enchantment, but maybe not the most powerful one, but a splash of it.
I just don't like it being in Decay, looking at it purely from how 0.124 looks at the moment and what's being played. Decay doesn't need this, and it's like, yeah, it's a good card, but not for Decay. You don't need that in Decay. So it might be a bit wasted in that sense. So still might be unplayable in a way, because Decay has other ways of dealing with that.
Well, my last sentence about that Unbind topic is that if they go through with this, then it's probably gonna be played as long as Eternal Sword and Oakblood is being played, because that is affecting two matchup. And if that's the case, then well, at least bye to my Order enchantment deck for the moment. Because that deck won't hold. Yeah. There's too much
Yeah, in certain metas where that deck is very powerful, this one would be heavily played then, I guess.
My enchantment sword is good, but with this, no.
No.
I didn't think of the sword. Well, yeah.
No one thinks of the sword. Moving on then, Righteous Partisan. The old one saw, I would say, no play. Is that right? Ludwig, did you ever play it?
I have tried. The issue is
In
that
Judgment?
In Judgment, everything gets played somewhat in Judgment.
Yeah, but as I said, I have tried, but the issue is that 2 health.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Well, you got more health now and also a completely different effect. I mean, the old one had +4 attack then, as long as you had less units on the field, which seemed like a mechanically tried to push in Rebellion together with Gallant Defender and so on. The new one doesn't care about that when it's on the field, but rather it has 3 power, 2 countdown, and 3 health. And when it comes into play, if you have fewer units than your opponent, you draw 1 scroll. So it's more like a conditional Sister of the Fox, with much better stats, of course. What do you guys think about this one? Maybe Guido wants to go first?
I can otherwise comment if Guido.
I'm pretty sure you can. Go ahead then.
Guido,
All
go! No?
Guido for one.
Is it my turn?
You have the
Yeah,
word.
go.
Okay, I think it's overpowered. Like Righteous Partisan now is just. I think it seems very, very strong. I think it's metagame shaping. I think, like, not shaping in the sense that everything will revolve around this scroll, obviously, but. What I mean is, like, in an order matchup, you will always have to think, do I have more or less creatures than my opponent? Because if I have more, he can just play this thing and get a huge advantage.
I think 2/3 would be enough, and he would still get played in decks that want to go late game. That's the 3 attack might be a bit too much there.
Ludwig?
Well, my comment is that I don't like. I am more. It's not just because it's order, but because it's they gives a good explanation of what they want from the skull and so on. And I don't like this change. And first of all, I don't feel he is good with the draw, but he is not overpowered. He's a Boom Reaver, which gives you 1 scroll if you are behind. That is not overpowered. But
Don't
it is
compare
good.
it to Boom Reaver, compare it to Sister of the Fox.
Of course I can compare it to Boom Reaver. Boom Reaver is a free drop with 3/2/3, and he is a free drop with 3/2/3. But it gives a scroll if you are behind.
Well,
and that is what I said. The difference is he gives a scroll if you are behind, and that makes him good. Instead of the Boom Reaver, he's just okay.
But you have to keep in mind that you don't really have to be behind. Like it's enough to be the second player, like not the one who starts. And you will probably have.
No.
Well, you're in a sense behind in that case.
You understand that it as it's worded, it's counting itself as well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway,
that makes the whole difference. I mean, you really have to be behind.
That makes a difference.
It is in play, so it's gonna count itself, and that means that you're at least 2 drops behind when you start your turn.
Okay.
Then it is a catch-up scroll. I mean, otherwise you're just on parity. But you have to play
really
this
good
one
against
and
DK.
the second one to even be on parity on the same turn there. So then it makes more sense.
So like
I think I read that
when
wrong.
he's most effective is when opponent has done like a Rat King, then he's effective. Otherwise he's good.
I mean,
I'm saying he's bad. I'm saying he's good, but this is not why I don't like the change. Why I don't like it is because they are saying this scroll was always intended as a comeback scroll. This makes it better at that, while also making it easy to understand when playing it is good idea. What I question is, how does this make a better comeback scroll? It's not, at least in my opinion.
Because
you get a draw, yes, but that won't really help you to come back into the game. What would make him a comeback scroll, and then perhaps make him do less damage or give him a conditional like last time or something is that when he comes into, if you are behind in units, then you played him for free, that he didn't cost any resources. Then he is a comeback scroll because you can play extra more units that turn.
That's true.
Exactly.
That is what makes a comeback. Comeback is not having card advantage. Comeback is being able to pull
Tempo advantage.
out
Protect the board, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's
to
the
build it
problem
out.
I have a bit is also that it will, if he for instance did something else conditionally, that he increased the countdown of a single unit on the board, for instance, when he came into play, if you were behind, then he would help you come back from a board state that you're clearly not winning. Now he's going to give you a scroll that's going to be putting you on parity. I mean, even if you're, I mean, it's going to be a very long grind to come back from that one, and where that scroll is going to matter. And the problem is that if you have a board where you're already behind, and there, for instance, on one thing I like to do, for instance, with when I'm playing my energy aggro deck is putting a one countdown guy on lane 2 and lane 4, so I'm covering the entire board with countdown. It also works with a slower unit, of course, if you have bombard in hand. I mean, at that point you're covering the entire board, so they need to pull a power play to even play something at that point. And this scroll didn't do anything about that. I mean, it would give them, it would be able to replenish, but I mean, I get the free attack at that point, so I don't see the comebacking in this one. I see a pretty good scroll, I think, but still, stats-wise, it's still worse than a skirmisher, for instance, on the board. Relentless is huge, and could argue that he's worse than Wings Shield and a lot of the other 3-drops as well. So.
And to give another kind of example, it's like there's two ways to comeback, and one is to stall, and that is to put out like a waking stone. Then you can make a stall comeback, or you can do a haste focus that also allows you to make a comeback. Doing a Potter won't make a comeback. It will make you draw more stuff, and what I also don't really like with this is the whole I feel kinda come into play effect is not a order thing. It's more of a growth thing. As sysp was touching on, is that they are sort of giving it heavily to one faction and semi to others. So maybe this is the semi one for order. Perhaps, but I'm just feeling that this is not really order themed to have into effect.
That's a good point.
I think they did touch on that also in the podcast when Mons was on, that they were trying to clean this identity up a little bit more. That growth would be a little bit more about comes into play and also caring about other units coming into play and so on, and order would be more focused on the board, like the old one was really. I mean, because it was counting stuff on the board and having a presence on the board at that point, as long as that state holds. I mean, this one is very conditional, and then it seems like they're it's not necessarily that they need to align everything and according to that philosophy. It just feels like since we're looking at so few scrolls now, this seems like a little bit of a shift from that design mentality, but we'll see. I mean, it's not even on test or anything like that, so it might be very changed when we it comes to live. Let's go a bit forward and look at Curse Presence, which is also something that hasn't been seeing a ton of play. They did get an increase now in the last patch, and now it actually reads that you enchant an opponent unit when the unit takes damage. Other units on that row gets Curse 2, and if a structure is enchanted, those units get Curse 4 instead. And if you're unfamiliar with the scroll, you probably didn't understand anything of what I was saying, which is probably why they cleaned it up. So now it's instead being target unit gains Curse 4 as a spell. Completely different then, and potentially much stronger.
I was just starting to think about including Curse Presence because of mono energy structures, because it sucks to play against them. And allowing me to curse like 2 things for Curse 4 for one scroll was getting kinda sexy in my head, and I was hoping for a change in different direction than just giving it plain Curse 4. I liked that it was something to help battle creatures in theory, and I would love them to emphasize more on the structure thingy in this scroll than just the curse, because that's boring to me.
Yeah, I agree with Ice Cream here. Maybe it is a good scroll now, but it went from interesting to boring. It's like, okay, I curse something with 4 gut damage. It's like making something that had an ability to a wind charger. Like, meh.
Yeah.
I think the problem Curse Presence had, if you ask me, the problem was that you cursed what was behind what you hit. So it's like, sure, those thing has Curse 4 or Curse 2, but what you need to get through, that thing that is blocking, that you have Curse Presence on, it's untouched. It doesn't get cursed. So
I'm actually not so sure. I think it might even count that thing, so it may
I'm
be
pretty
Curse
sure.
3.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't
Yeah?
happen, because I
Okay.
have done some testing, but it was quite some while ago, so maybe it was a bug that they have fixed. I don't know.
I'm not
But
too
at
sure,
least
yeah.
when I tested, it didn't do that. I felt like, well, that's a problem, because as I said, as a decay player, I said it in the previous podcast. As a decay player, you don't really have good ways to touch what is behind if it is a structure, and this is emphasized on structure
Yeah.
as it gets more cursed. But this, sure, but I think you could tweak it around a bit
I think-
more. You didn't have to do it this approach.
What would suit it a lot would be if it was a spell that would target one line, whatever, and if that lane had a structure in front, then it would put Curse 4 on all of them. It wouldn't be simpler, which they wanted with the change, but it would remain fun, remain helping against mono-energy structures, which is just painful to play against when you're decay, and it would still be kind of sexy.
It's a little bit like Cursed Hex. Which one is that? Hex Curse? Curse Hex?
Something like
Are you
that.
thinking
I don't remember
about
what is the
Are you
one.
thinking
Yeah,
about hex marks?
No, the
No,
Infernal
the one-
Blast
the
is
one
his
that-
curse.
the one that's doing the Infernal Blast.
Yeah.
Curse one in
I was thinking of that, but I said hex marks, which is wrong.
Yeah.
Cluster hex.
Cluster Hex. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, the clusterfuck.
But it seems like, I mean, it's the same thing with a lot of these. I mean, that you can do curse in a line, you can do curse in a row, maybe you can do curse in one point there. This is then the equivalent of Bloodline Taint and on one, because that Bloodline Taint can also target units and units
Yeah.
in general, as you know, and it would curse, if you put it on a single one, it would curse it for 2 for 4 decay, and this one would then be a less it would infect less units, but 1 unit more powerfully than, I guess, for a cheaper price. Would you play this new Curse Presence, Guido?
I'm currently not really playing a lot of decay, so I mean, I used to
Flash
play
it maybe?
a lot.
It's flashable now.
No,
with
no,
2D
no.
On 2DK alone. I mean,
No. It's not going in my growth deck, no. But I don't think it's very good. I mean, you have to get value out of it like pretty soon. Otherwise, you just wasted a scroll. I mean, there are high priority targets now. Like Wildling, obviously, is probably the most common example now with Oakblood.
yeah.
Maybe that's a good way to deal with it. Maybe that was also the concern behind it. I don't know. But
It seems like it would eat completely through Magic Armor, for instance. I mean, Magic Armor 1 wouldn't do anything worse
Yeah.
with this, since
Yeah.
I mean, it would take off 1 damage, since curse damage is applied to the total first, and then Magic Armor is taken
yeah,
off. So.
and I mean the biggest discussion after the latest patch, I think at least, was about Magic Armor and how it works and if it's too strong or I don't know. Yeah. So maybe that is.
Question. If I play Curse or something and then play Baleful Witch and it's something that has Curse as structure, does it deal damage to structure? I'm noob.
No.
I don't
No.
know. No?
Baleful Witch says so specifically that it's only targeting creatures.
Yeah, then it's even more useless. If Baleful Witch damaged structures, then this could maybe be more fun against structures, but I don't just see it using against anything else and against
I
structures.
think Curse 4 is a lot though. I mean, and for only 2, there is definitely plenty of triggers in decay from attacks and from brain lice and infectious blight and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure that it should see some play at least with this one.
Maybe in a fast, like tempo-oriented decay deck. I mean, I don't know if that's even a serious deck, but I've played against Donkey today who tried something like that, and also I can't remember who it was. Someone of our guild also did that, and maybe I don't know. In a deck where you have less resources, maybe the cost is much more important. So
here's a question though. And it's also something that Squid talked about a bit in chat. I mean, now they're revisiting this scroll, Curse Presence, and they're presumably going to use the same name and same unit and same cost on same art and same cost on it. Is it really the same scroll? I mean, it's why is it even like flavorful now with Curse Presence and the art that they decided for it? I mean, the enchantment was a lingering one that affected the row. This one is going to be one unit, and that's apparently now has a cursed presence. Is this really a way that you should be going with reusing the art?
I would rather give that question when it comes to Unbind. It's like, what does this picture has to do with it?
Unbind the enchantments.
Are the enchantments like floating away to the air, or what is happening?
It still makes more sense that presence, I think. Yeah.
I do not agree. Presence, like, it just gives an example. Like, here's something that has been cursed by 4. I'm not sure why you curse a Waking Stone by 4, but still, it's an example of something you can curse.
Let's get to the point that sysp is raising, though. I think, that these scrolls could have had new names, new arts, and these ones could have been adjusted more towards their names and. Yeah, but then again, they wanna recycle old stuff while making them playable. It's kind of hard balance to strike.
Which makes perfect sense when it comes to the really heavy stuff. I mean, I know that assets-wise, spells and enchantments are I mean, basically just the card art and the name and some flavor maybe. I mean, and that's easily replaced. It's really the card art that they're trying to salvage, I think, in these cases. When it comes to units, obviously it's much more expensive for them to create units with sound effects and all of that. Maybe actually enchantments have sound effects now. I don't remember if from the latest patch. So maybe there's some more assets there, but
I don't think it's about assets even. I think it's more about let me get a word. Sets. Like, you have limited sets per year, and you wanna get use of the old ones. You just can't put how many is it? 60 per set. So you can't put 63 because you made 3 new spells because they were easy to make. You just can put out 60 new scrolls, so you have to fit it in there somewhere, and adjusting the old ones makes sense.
I will comment on Cursed Presence after my short off-topic comment here when we was talking about the asset and stuff. And it's just that I'm curious. We had all this, if it was 40 new sounds or whatever, and why is Cursemonger still sounding like a scattergunner? Anyway, regarding Cursed Presence, if they wanted to make it more simple to understand. They succeeded with that. But if you were to ask me how I would change Curse Presence personally, I think it could be playable and good if they made some kind of number on the curse. I'm saying here number because I'm not sure what would be balanced, and they made it work like a Meyer curse with the poison.
On the other hand,
but you curse instead what is around.
The other hand, now I'm looking at the art here. That art could really go on any any scroll. It doesn't say anything. I'm gonna post it in the chat here. In this case, I mean that's very generic. I think I feel you about the unbinder. That definitely seems like a structure blowing up also. So I mean, it's good that they're going back and revamping stuff. On the other hand, I mean, some of these are. Yeah, I mean, I can see why they are doing it, but maybe it's stretching a little bit to think that this is the same kind of unit. I mean, it's almost if they ever want to catch the people that are coming back, actually, maybe this is even a deterrent also, that they come back and then they've changed basically the scrolls that they were playing with into something that they don't recognize anymore.
Root Puppet Soldier, twice on Reddit in past 3 days.
I agree with Ranrab in chat here. Maybe we should just have given it taxing. Maybe that was...
Yeah, give everything taxing. Okay, what if every scroll had taxing? Would that be a good game?
Yes!
Well,
Please.
but
No, do you
Highlander format.
do you understand what a drag delayed game would be? It would be, okay, dude, just wait.
You would play one of
let-
everything.
wait.
You wouldn't
Let
have
me
3
rap
ops in
here.
your
Then
decks.
everything costs one more when you cycle.
no, but sysp, I mean, I get your point,
Like,
but
Google
in this case,
Skirmisher
they were
7.
changing not cards that they used to play, but cards that they
That no one
used to
played.
not play.
Yeah,
You know,
save scrolls. I get you. But no, it was maybe a little bit more sidetracked. I think that the last scroll there was really Thunder Search. We only got the cleanup. We can leave that one now, and maybe.
May I give my comment?
Please give your comment because it was fairly funny.
please talk about the name, okay?
It's just
Because-
that they probably just changed the wording. It's nothing new with the. But the wording on the old was target unit and all units connected by adjacent units receive 2 damage. Now it is target unit and connected units are dealt 2 damage. So when it says not adjacent and connected, I had this image that maybe if you use like uneasy alliance, you can do a port of them because the uneasy alliance units are connected. So you're like Thunder Search and goes through to the another uneasy alliance, so you like portal it.
Well, I mean, I guess in a sense
Yeah.
also that if you have a Gravelock Elder out, every Gravelock is
Oh,
connected to
yeah,
the Elder,
yeah,
so maybe it's,
all the Gravelocks, like, boom, there's nowhere to
this
hide.
is not clear at all.
Connect-
We don't understand what you mean, Mojang.
Using Mojang!
The old one was perfect, though.
Nobody will play
Using-
any tribes effects anymore. No wolves, no nothing. No.
They do have some weird.
It's the perfect counter to scout the tunnel.
They did change receive 2 damage to dealt 2 damage instead, so maybe they're trying to clean up the nomenclature around undamage as well. We'll leave that one for now and continue on with the next point, which is their wild experiments. Wild is receiving some mixed reviews, I think, right now on live. Some people say that the wild decks from last patch was fairly fine, and that they're now nerfed into oblivion with some of the changes in the new one. Some say that that's not no big change, but the wild system isn't working. There doesn't seem to be a lot of wild play in ranked at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Well,
not working. I spent like 20 games with Gravelock Energy Growth deck, and the wild was just useless there. I preferred all memorials to this. It really is costing you too much tempo, and it's just second color doesn't work even with the wild. So it
I think we
definitely
can
needs
at
to
least
change.
agree on. I mean, regardless of if there's possible to create wild decks at the moment or not, we can at least agree on if their idea was that wild would be, or rather multi resource would be more of the norm, and mono resource would be an option.
Well,
I
that
think we're
didn't
not
happen.
at that point at the moment. It's really hard to build a competitive wild deck. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
possible that it exists out there, but it's hard to build.
I'm not saying that you cannot build wild decks. I'm saying you can build them, but not thanks to wild. but because of some other interesting combos. And it might, maybe if you have those combos and good ramps and, I don't know, good enough draw to keep up the card starving you would get normally, then you can make a deck with wild and it could be pretty okay. But if you are trying to play like a standard scrolls deck that we have been mostly playing for past year, then it's really something else. It's just you don't have the cards to get to those good drops, and if you don't get to those good drops, you just are done in turn 8 and round 8, and it needs a tempo boost.
Here's my comment about the multi-resource, and do not take what I say here as the prophecy of truth or something, because this is not exactly my expert area, but this is my take on it. When you go multi-resource, you in this game, because it's designed in that way in this game, you need some kind of ramp cards as well. So you have this ramp card that takes space in your deck, and that means your deck is smaller, and like 6 cards taking space in your deck, it actually makes quite a difference. So what you kind of need is you need these other cards to be more valuable than usual, and you cannot have just better cards than you would have in the mono decks, because that makes no sense. They exist there as well. What they need is good synergy. They have better synergy with each other than normally because it is a multi-resource, and that synergy is kind of lacking in the game at the moment. Is what I'm feeling. This is my take on when it comes to the whole multi-resource thing.
Yeah, the synergy definitely is what would solve it, but it has been addressed before that it's too hard to create those synergies, and if you create them, it's not making deck variety, it's making staple cards for those combinations. So they wanted to make something universal to just really boost the variety, but it's not there. And I don't think that taking up 6 places in your deck is too big of a deal. I played with Tribal Memorials a lot in the Grave deck, and I had no trouble sacrificing them later on, and they were always a good draw. I never was like said, damn, I drew this. But the problem was you played it, and it was turn 1 play, turn 2 sacrifice, and turn 3 you can maybe play something, but it has to be energy, and you already are 1 card out, and if you are the first player to start, you are kind of at 3 cards, or how many, maybe 4, and it's just you just fall behind, and you cannot get to that 5 energy, 3 growth, even with wild properly.
I think like you somehow.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just feel that you somehow have to sacrifice the whole turn normally to get wild in some way, and you fall behind like 1 resource for the main color, if you want to call it that, and that's just too much of a sacrifice right now, I think. And I mean, just from experience, it's not working, because I played like 100 or even maybe 200 games the last 2 weeks and haven't seen a single wild deck in ranked. I mean,
no. I think that even decks that were fairly good at, I mean, I played around with Godro also in the wild patch, and it ramps very easily with 3 summons and 3 of the stone pacts. So you can pretty much always drop it on turn 3 or 4 and then sack for wild. But even in a deck like that, it's really hard to justify the turn off where you can't do anything but ramp, really, like you're alluding to.
It's like every time I try to make a multi-resource deck, the sort of conclusion I've come to is that this is semi-viable and it's working when I'm doing some kind of good multi-resource deck, but I can do this as well in my mono deck. So why should I make a deck that is more complex and has higher risk to fail because I draw wrong things at the start and such, and cannot do my ramp in time or get wrong color and so on in wrong times and so on, instead of just go a mono that can do the exactly same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is what I mean with the multi-resource. That is one of the things, like that is why Gold Draw was popular. That is why that removal deck, which people are outcrying about, was popular, because you can't do that in a mono deck. That is the synergy that exists in multi-resource. And when you find something that is unique and synergizes well in a multi-resource, that is when the deck becomes most part viable. It's not always like sometimes it just sucks, even if it's unique. But that is sort of when it's working. But if you can do it in a mono deck, then that I rarely see that really working in a multi-resource.
So I might be whatever. Are you saying that the system doesn't matter, that even if Wild was like super great, like okay, neutral. Are you saying that any improvement to Wild will not be enough on its own, and it has to be in those combos? Like, do you think it has to be in that?
I am saying that the Wild is the currency, and the currency needs to work, but we have nothing to buy.
I think I can elaborate a bit on that. Actually, Squiddy had an idea in chat here that might illustrate why it might be a problem with Wild, and why we might need ramp actually. He suggested that if you had a multi-resource deck, why wouldn't you be able to sack for Wild on every turn? Just if you have more than one resource in your deck, why wouldn't you be able to sacrifice for any resource? And obviously at that point you're gonna play the best scrolls of any resource really, and there will be no resource identity. So that's the extreme of it. If we go into, for instance, how Magic the Gathering is handling it, because multi-resource is, or rather multicolor in that case, is fairly viable in most formats in Magic. It's the norm in some. And the reason why there still exists mono resource decks are really, like, in my opinion, there's two reasons. One is that there are a lot of colorless good lands in Magic that you want to be able to play. But if you have a very heavy color allowance, that you need to have color mana symbols and not just be playing colorless mana to play your stuff, then it's a big deterrent to actually playing those very powerful lands like Mishra's Factory, Mutavault, Wasteland, etc. So that's one thing, not very applicable to Skull, I think, in this moment. The other one is that you have a less stable mana base in general, so you're going to lose some games to mana screw, and that means not the regular mana screw where you don't get enough lands, but the color mana screw where you don't get the right lands. Especially if you have a lot of colored symbols on your cards, which the more powerful ones usually do. And in Scrolls we have perfect ramping. We can always get whatever resource we want every time we ramp. So we wouldn't have that flaw in our mana bases or our resource bases, which means that if Wild gets good enough, that penalty isn't really there. I mean, you can always try to steer it towards that way. Right now, there is a very, very, very real chance, I would say, of color screw, even when you have a Wild deck, because you might end up in a situation where you can't utilize all resources on the same turn because you draw the wrong scrolls for it, and therefore you have a less powerful turn or a worse output than you would have if you had mono in general and had the same amount of resources. So the question is if it's actually possible to strike a balance in between there where you have both. I mean, does it need to be that you can get these screws in order to keep multi-resource in check, or is it possible that there is another system that exists that will kind of get to the sweet spot there?
I think that Ludwig made a very good point when he said it's very much about the scrolls that you can actually play with the new deck, multicolor deck. I think the system is really just can only do so much. We have a very simple resource system in Scrolls, and I think that's a quite nice thing. If you played Magic the Gathering, you will always know the feeling of mana screw or mana flood or whatever, and it's really terrible if you try to win and then you just draw lands for 5 turns. But So the system is very nice, but it's also a lot simpler, and therefore you just can do less things with it, I think. But that's fine. You can just balance the cards around it. Like if you have the problem that multi factions are just too strong, like the decks, then you can always make cards like that that give bonuses for only playing one faction, for example. But I think the main part of handling this problem might be in designing the right scrolls.
Here's my suggestion. I don't think the way you have wild now, it doesn't give enough to actually help the multicolor decks, as Guido was talking about. With it feels like it hampers your tempo too much when you want to sacrifice for that wild and so on. And the idea Squid had with being able to just sacrifice for wild all the time, I think that also would be too potent.
No doubt.
It's one deck,
I won't go into every scenario to why that will become too powerful, but it will become too powerful. But what if we made it like this? What if we made it like every time because here's the thing, I feel we have ramp scrolls in this game, so it should have some more interaction a bit with the ramp scrolls, perhaps. So maybe every time what if it works like now, but instead that you have to sacrifice to get the wild, you automatically get the wild when another wild is possible to have. Well, would that possibly work? I think that would at least really help. I'm not sure how much it would help, but it wouldn't be negative.
No, it would be a very positive thing. It seems like that seems a little bit too powerful, maybe. There was another idea raised in one of the Scrolls guys thread that was interesting that we can discuss a little bit. It was reversing the system as it is right now. That on the first turn you could sack for one wild, but then you couldn't sack for more wild until you had one of every resource in your deck as well. Would that make it? I mean, obviously it would be more powerful, and you would be able to splash one cost scrolls for.
But can you repeat
free.
it again?
The first turn you can sack for wild right off, and then if you want the second wild, you have to have one of every resource that you have in the deck first. So you would have, for instance, in a growth order deck, you would have to have on the first turn you sack for wild, then you sack for growth, then you sack for order, then you can sack for the second wild.
So you're suggesting the system we have now, but you reverse it.
Yes,
exactly.
The wild can be a step ahead.
Exactly.
Yes. It would help, but I don't think it would solve all the problems that we have. It would definitely be good and better, and might be worth a try. Maybe it would work, but I have a feeling like it will take more than just that.
I think it's maybe worth a try, and I think we should actually have several different things in maybe testing grounds or just test server. I don't know, but just to try it, because I think it's good to theorize about it, but
I understand
it's always hard to know how the balance works out then.
Maybe there is. I mean, it will get very convoluted. I think that one of the problem with that one is obviously that you could have ragged wolves for free in every deck. You could have rippers for free in every deck. You could have focus for free in every deck. You could have potion resistance for free in every deck, or whatever you want there. Any one cost would basically be for free if you only want to stay on one wild, which might be a very weird situation. One idea would maybe to be that wild could only be used for resources that you actually have one of. So you would actually not be able to utilize it unless you had one order, for instance, in your growth deck also. then wild could count for order. The problem is explaining this to a new player also, which regardless of how balanced it is. But that could be one idea to make sure that the free at least goes away. Then it would be we needed to sack for at least one order as well.
Also, like, here's my whole take about the thing. If it was up to me, which it certainly is not, and that'd probably be good because I would just make it messed up, is that the ramp cards, I think, should they revamp them if necessary, if they become imbalanced, but make them cheap. I would go as far as make them. I made the suggestion before, but with making them like one cost, the ramp cards, but you give them taxing, like maybe taxing 2 or whatever, so you can use them early. On, and then they sort of fall off later on,
Yes.
and then make it so that you automatically get wild when you can get wild. With those two changes, I think we could see more viable multi-resource decks. But that is like what I would throw out there as my suggestion. I think everyone has their own ideas, and everyone has good points.
2 problems with your suggestion. That's A, it would be, in my opinion, pretty easily abusable, and B would still be heavily card starved. I don't think ramp is the answer because being card starved is just too big of a deal. Having no options in early turns just costs you the game most of the time. So it needs to be something that's like free and allows you to, I don't know, it's super difficult to discuss this really.
Yeah.
But
Well, you may be you may be right. I cannot give too much of a argument if you're wrong or not before I would be able to test that, which I cannot.
yeah, I think
Also,
we need to
can I-
test. Let's settle that
Yeah, we
need
can
to
agree
test
on that.
loads of things, and like discussions are nice, but you cannot foresee all the abuse that would come from it and the real curve of your hand until you try it.
Can I just ask if you tried replenish in any way, or if you think
Yes.
that might be a way to go? Like, I don't know.
Are you asking us all
It
or just him?
didn't do much
No,
for
you-
me, personally. Like, it could let you play one of the scrolls that you wouldn't otherwise. Like, you get screwed and get full growth hand with Braves, and you are going into energy first because we want those Grave locks. So
Yeah.
you can pop out that Brave or, I don't know, Grave Hawk, but it doesn't really help going into the higher costed things. I think it's on the contrary slowing you down a bit, unless you get good value from the replenish scroll.
Yeah. Okay.
It's I think that the slowness that Guido was talking about is maybe the big point also, that I mean they want to have viable multi-resource decks of every kind in the game, and not only just control decks but also aggro decks and mid-range decks and so on.
Did they say that? I mean, that's also an important question. Because in Magic, for example, there was, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Well, you do
I
have
don't know.
Magic is a bit different because there is environments also where it's almost effortless to get the proper mana
Yeah,
base.
that's what I want to say,
Sudex
like,
and so on,
yeah.
where you have.
Yeah, but
where you
in standard normally, probably the
In standard,
multicolored are probably more controlish. Probably,
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely, and then that's with a more limited card pool. And you have to understand also that the
Yes.
Magic card pool in Vintage is like 15,000, 18,000 cards,
Yeah.
something like that. So
if not
obviously
more.
there is a pretty good mana base in there somewhere. But it's in standard, absolutely, as you say. Usually the mana bases aren't good enough to allow for really good aggro decks.
Yeah.
There are exceptions where either they have printed a really good mana base, or if there are really good synergetic creatures.
Or if
But
they
usually
just-
that's usually it's not possible that it goes into control. So
Yeah, the question is if Mojang wants to go in a more controlling direction for multicolored decks, or maybe mid to late game,
think
or
it's
if they
early
really
to
want
mid.
to do, yeah, if no, I mean, yeah, just for multi-factions. If they want to push multi-factions, also tempo decks, aggro decks, then yeah, they really have to think about how to make the system different than it is now. Because right now you need ramp scrolls, and you don't want to run ramp scrolls in and tempo deck. It just doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, it's a little bit like Gojo's, for instance, which is operating on a very low aggressive mana base. Usually now the new one is 2 growth, 1 order, and 1 wild. And with that, then you can play powerful combos like Brave and Warder, for instance, or you could play Heartborn Mystic, and you can play Brave with Ducal Infantryman and so on. So there's a lot of synergy within the deck. Still not enough to make it do something that the aggro growth deck cannot do, but more powerfully. So it's definitely tough to get that balance where it's possible to do a good aggro deck with it. And maybe we're fine with that, but I think that wasn't the message they got from the community when they released Wild. I mean, the message they got back was that we hate these control decks that are popping up everywhere. Please nerf them.
Yeah.
And
I also, something they have commented on several times is that how they feel community and so on has been giving more feedback about the outcome from Wild rather than mechanic, and I'm sort of feeling that there's not that much to say about the mechanic. It's working, and what is it doing? Well, it's not really helping enough because you're not really getting the tempo you need for it, and you're not really getting the benefit. It's not really solving the issues, and I won't repeat myself too much, but once again, I feel one of the core issues is that there is not enough synergy between the factions. You just can take stuff from the other faction. It's like, what, the Witch Doctor has synergy with Order's humans? Sure, but you have humans in Decay. Like, why would you do that? There's very little synergy. And that is more the core problem, in my opinion. So therefore, yes, you will get a lot of feedback about the outcome, because that is sort of what there is to kind of talk about. And we can throw out all kinds of ideas how we want to change Wild, and that is what people are doing. Mostly people are talking about Magic the Gathering, but I'm not sure about that.
Do we want more hand-holding when it comes to multi-resource? I mean, in the original set, there was 2 very clear indicators that yes, you should be able to play multi-resource decks, and that was Gravehawk and Gravelock Outcast, which are obviously pointing you in the direction that, okay, I have Gravehawk here, there's no Gravelocks in Growth. And Outcast, of course, is mentioning the other resource also on the scroll. Do we need more of this heavy hand-holding? For instance, if Gravehawk was +2 attack for each Gravelock, would you see more Gravelock decks than at this point?
Maybe just a second card, right? I mean,
well, possibly. And I like what I think it was you, Ice Cream, who said this. And I like more that approach. Is that you can have something like a Gravelock Outcast, but make it so that he gets different kind of effects on him depending on what resource you're pumping.
I didn't say that.
So to speak. Okay, it was someone else.
yeah, I'm just
whatever. But it was someone else, and I like, for example, that approach. Like, make it so that depending what kind of resource you're using on the Gravelock Outcast, he gets different kinds of effects from it.
Imagine being a beginner now. I'm going to jump into your sentence because we are running out of time and I can see it. So I'll jump into it and say, imagine being a beginner. You come into a game, somebody plays a creature, and you have no idea what is it doing because it has 4 different effects or 3, and you just what is it doing? And if he has 3 resources, does it do 2 of these effects? It's too complicated. It's a good idea. I like it, but it would never make it into game, in my opinion.
It doesn't have to be complicated, but it depends how simple they want the card to be. But you can just make it a short, like growth, heals up, and so on. Like making short sentences about it. It's possible.
Sounds like a pretty good idea to maybe do some more of that. It's strange that we haven't seen more of it, but I'm pretty sure that it will come more within Waypoints or a future set, that they will do more of these more obvious crossovers.
Also,
Anyways, as Ice Cream said, we're running out of time, so I want to thank my very impromptu casting crew here that managed to rally with a very short notice when our other plans fell through, and we think we managed to create a decent show out of it at least. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. I think that's all we have for today. There was more in the post, but we might discuss it afterwards in some kind of after show. So stick around if you want to, and if you are listening to us on iTunes, where we're at now, or on our YouTube channel with the Badger Guild, then this will be goodbye. So thank you guys for joining us, and see you next week, hopefully.
Goodbye.
See ya. I'm
Bye-bye.
pretty sure